Welcome to For Love and Play. I'm matchmaker comic El Mizel. With me is comedians Keenan Weaver and Louie B. For Love and Play, the show about dating like a goddamn adult. We're going to discuss who to spend your time with for love or for play. Let's do it, boys.
This show contains adult content for entertainment purposes. Listener discretion is advised.
Not a doctor.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of For Love and Play. I'm your host, Keenan Weaver, back with my favorite people, minus a little estrogen. Louie, what's up, man?
Shalom, Baruch Atah, as Yael would say.
All right, well, I like the homage to Yael, but she is not with us for some very dire reasons.
She might be coming on later, but we kick the ties, light the fires. The show must go on.
That's what it is, and we got a special guest, and we can't really have them waiting so long all the time, right?
Right.
But we know how women do, so let's get right into it. Louie, you got a better friend with you this time, right?
Yes, I am honored. I've known this gentleman for a few years already. His name is Earhauer and Brock. He is a masculinist, and the reason why I wanted to have him on was because, I mean, especially when other people have found out that I am in the men's, a men's rights activist, people have always asked me, what is an MGTOW, or a man going his own way? Men going their own. Mm-hmm.
I feel like once we finish introducing our friend and he speaks, you guys are going to have to define all of these terms.
Yes.
I, for one, have no idea what you're talking about. I'm pretty sure our listeners don't either. So, Ed Howard, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, brother, man. How are y'all doing?
So far, so good, my brother. How you, Yeah, so I mean, I just really wanted to get you on because you are an expert. You are very outspoken, especially on Facebook about this. And would you consider yourself an MGTOW?
I consider myself a masculinist. There are different categories in what we call the men's movement. There's MRAs, men's rights. There's MGTOW, men going their own way. There's masculinists. And each of us has a different approach to how we handle the issues that are unique to men in the modern age.
Oh, okay. So do you date?
I am, at the moment, working on a book, so I am celibate. I have dated in the past. Masculinists promote two forms of dealing with women at a romantic level, either complete celibacy or polygyny, which is a form of polygamy where one man has multiple women.
Oh, that sounds like a dream. What do you think of that, Keenan?
That does not sound like a dream at all to me. I don't want to get married to one girl. Let's get back to kind of defining those. That I've heard some terms: MGTOW, masculinist. These are all words that I think most people aren't familiar with. Let's try to break that down, and then we'll find out what category you kind of fit into, and we'll get more into that.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning. What would be an MRA?
All right, so an MRA is a men's rights activist, and their history actually goes back to Warren Farrell and a couple others who created this movement. These are feminists. Well, they claim to be former feminists. We, as masculinists, kind of see them as the flip side of feminism. That is, this feminism attack for women's issues, MRA's attack for men's issues, but they're both promoters of equality.
Okay.
Well, I mean, let me devil's advocate in what I've heard. So, that are marginalized and they're the dominant society. So...
Well, sure, okay. So most workplace deaths are men, over 90%. Over 90% of the homeless are men. Something that surprises most people is most rapes are men in war, in prison, even in standard society. Most war deaths are men. Most violent acts, muggings, murders, and so on are men. We masculinists run the only domestic abuse shelter for men in the country, and it is in North Carolina. And men are, believe it or not, in cases of single initiator domestic abuse, 70% of the initiators are women, In dual aggressor, where both are aggressing back and forth, it's 50% are initiated by women and 50% initiated by men. Over 73% of all murder victims in domestic abuse cases are men. The women, in most of those cases, either commits the murder herself or she gets a proxy to do it. Very often when she's getting a proxy to do it, she is accusing the man himself of committing domestic abuse against her, but we find out that the only evidence of any domestic abuse is a dead man's body laying on the floor. Men are victims of false rape allegations, and when they're victims of false rape allegations, there's no retraction in the news. 2012 UN report came out saying that most of the victims of sexual trafficking were boys, and most of the victimizers were women. So, yeah, around the globe, the person who's going to be more likely to experience violence is going to be men. In the age category from the 20s to the 30s now, there is a wage gap among men. That is, men earn less than their female counterparts. That is despite the fact that men have to do overtime. Men are not permitted to leave the job if they have a child sick, if they're the primary caregiver. And I could go on and on. But these are just some examples.
Alrighty. We just got joined by Yael. She just got on.
Hey! Hi, everyone. I apologize for rechecking in late. I blame children. I agree with him, by the way. You can't, it's frowned upon for a man to leave work early to go retrieve his kid from school. He's totally right.
I almost feel like she has to hear the rest of the stuff, but let's
Yeah. Okay. So, the argument that I hear about, from women about this is like, well, men get raped, men are getting raped by men, so it's still we should teach men not to rape. But,
well, that's complete and utter cow shit. First of all, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of my history. So, I grew up in a divorce household. My mother started raping me at least by the age of 3. But when I heard her tell stories to her friends who laughed about it, she was molesting me as an infant. Okay, 70% of rapists were raped by their mother. It's learned behavior. Now, that doesn't mean 70% of those who are raped do rape. Many of us, like myself, never go off and rape. The instance of rape, of men raping women, is so little that feminists have had to redefine rape. So, for instance, there are posters now, Jake is drunk, Mary is drunk. They had sex. Jake raped Mary. Well, wait a minute, why did Mary rape Jake? We've now got a so-called social justice warrior in South Africa claiming that she went into the shower with a drunk man, he invited her, and he raped her. Well, wait a minute, he was drunk. By every feminist definition of the word, when he invited her to the shower, he could not consent to that because he was drunk. But, and here's the unique thing about rape, and this goes through the whole history of rape. Rape has always been defined by males penetrating females against not the female's will, but against society's will, the father's will, the grandfather's will, or so on. Okay? This goes back to Middle Eastern paganism, Persia, and so on, where the woman was seen as property. I myself am pagan, so I'm not talking against paganism, but it was a unique system in their culture that the women were viewed as property, and that's where the concept of rape came from. So today in our laws, it's still, even though the laws are now finally being written gender neutral, the act of the law, that is the police, the judges, and so on, still hold that it is penis in vagina, the penis forcing the vagina somehow. Even sodomy was completely considered a different crime. But it has become that so few men rape that feminists have to hold up signs saying things like, I need feminism because men can still rape women with their eyes. So now looking at a woman is considered an act of rape. In Italy, a man was actually convicted for looking at a woman on the train. So these concepts that men are only being raped by men is false. That's number one. But let's address those issues where men are raped by other men. or men are killed by other men in war, often at the behest of women, as in the case of World War I and II, where a man that didn't join the military was given a white flower to humiliate him. And in one instance, a private was handed this flower, and he handed out his paybook, and he literally slapped the woman because he was dressed in his street clothes going to a funeral. And she tried to humiliate him by handing him this flower, and he just slapped her with his paybook. And that ended that. Not saying he should have slapped her, but men often are forced into violence at the behest of women in a society. Now,
okay.
however, let me wrap up this one part. When I'm the one who's experiencing violence at the hands of another man, to say that because that guy's a man, that therefore somehow I'm responsible because we both have penises, is to victim blame. And that's just utter cow shit. If a woman is kidnapped and raped and murdered by another woman, we don't say, well, it was a woman, ergo, it's women's fault. No, it's that woman's fault. Thank you for letting me finish. I know I've rambled for a minute.
Right. Like, okay, I just, because I didn't want the whole focus of the show to be that. I wanted to really focus on the whole MGTOW movements, but I think it's important to at least get the whole background because, that. So so let's get into the whole MGTOW movement. What makes a man choose?
Well, what does the term mean first?
Yeah.
Okay, so the term means men going their own way. It was created by two men who are actually married, by the way, each married. So some people believe that MGTOW is... Say again?
They were each married together?
No,
each other?
apologies.
Married independently.
Yeah, they each have their own wives. So a lot of people think that MGTOW is anti-marriage. Some MGTOW are married, some MGTOW are single, some MGTOW are philanderers, some MGTOW are celibate. It literally means that, men going their own way. So the way Louis B. might go his own way might be different than how I go my own way, might be different how George over here goes his own way. In my case, I'm masculinist, but, we see MGTOW as kind of one stage often, and it is often one stage on the way towards a man becoming and growing into a masculinist. So how each one goes his own way can vary, but it does mean men going their own way, them making their own decisions and not having the path of their life determined solely by society, family, culture, tradition. It's time for each individual man to start to make up his own mind. If you're going to get married, that's fine. That's your choice. But if you're not, then that's your choice too. And do so with conscious application.
So why this?
Of future
I'm a little confused.
awareness.
I'm a little confused. Sure. Why does this term exist when this just sounds like an adult, a person making their own choice? What is the pressure from society that you think that there needs to be a term to define someone who is single, someone who is married, someone who is that is everybody?
Yeah, so what kind of happens is a lot of men make accidental decisions, as do women. And that is, they just kind of stumble through life, and what happens, and what society tells them to do, they do, okay? So if you're getting married because your mother is pestering you for grandchildren, right, and pestering you to get married, and you get married, and that decision is against your better interest, because now she does have a grandchild, but you're paying, your wife has left, and you're paying large sums of child support. You really didn't go your own way. You went your mother's way, or you went your father's way, or you went society's way. Okay, so sure, it is really MGTOW are doing what men have done for centuries, and that is making decisions. But what MGTOW are trying to do is they're trying to make conscious decisions that favor themselves first, rather than favoring society or favoring family and others. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. You're.
It's clear. It doesn't make sense though. Like, I get what you're saying, but it just seems like, especially if it's supposed to be a branch over or extension from MRA and the issues, quote unquote, that men face, it just seems to me that it's an arbitrary term, because I just think people tend to do that either learning from experiences or not. Like, how does one kind of like make this conscious effort to say that they're a part of this MGTOW and promote that they are going their own way versus someone who just is living their life?
Yeah, so probably the major difference, first of all, MGTOW doesn't really think of himself as part of MGTOW. He thinks of himself usually as a MGTOW, right? That's like saying, like a Buddhist or a Muslim or a pagan. All of these might have performed certain types of rituals, right? And a Buddhist is going to perform a very specific type of ritual, and maybe that Buddhist is going to be a little more conscious about focusing on the enlightenment coming from within rather than gaining it from outside. Now, MGTOW is doing, as you suggest, what men have done, and they've done what they've wanted to do, or they've attempted to do what they've wanted to do throughout the centuries. The difference now is that, in the past, if you got married and you had a kid because that's what society told you to do, the repercussions were whatever they were, okay? Maybe you had a wife that you weren't wanting to live with or whatever. But now the repercussions are so great, a woman can say something and make an accusation, and she's automatically believed that you've committed a rape. No evidence needed. You can pay large sums of child support. You can have all of your property taken away from you. So what the MGTOW are doing, or the men going their own way, is they are attempting to deal with that and prevent those from happening in their lives. So by going their own way as a conscious choice, just as a Buddhist, anybody could have found enlightenment within, right? But a Buddhist is following one path to enlightenment within, and he's making a conscious decision to search for that enlightenment inside. So the MGTOW, like others, is going and doing what he's going to do, but he's making a conscious effort to plan specifically to defend against all of these assaults upon his property, upon his conscience, upon his body, and so on and so forth.
Is it defending against them, or is it just running away?
Sure, both. Why not? It depends on the man going his own way. If a man going his own way is getting married, he certainly would be taking steps to make sure that if a divorce occurs, he's not having to hand over all his property or large sums of money.
So that's that's like what a prenup is, right?
Yeah, but prenups are completely useless. Prenups are not honored by courts. So you would have to use other tactics and other methods. Most MGTOW, there are going to be some that are going to be married, but most are going to be very, very careful. In my case, as a masculinist, we're kind of a spiritual movement as well. And so the way I've been careful with women is making sure that the women I'm around are from my community, not just random women. So myself being a pagan, I generally date pagan women. I'm generally around pagan women who are around other pagans, so I get opportunity to see what their reputation is. MGTOW, of course, would have to take other tactics. Some MGTOW don't date, some MGTOW date for short time, some MGTOW just go out to a pub and meet a girl, leave, and then never see her again. Each one's got its own method and tactic.
It just still sounds like any guy.
Yao, do you have
I'd agree.
Yao, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, are you, I guess I'm trying to, it sounds, I mean, I guess I don't know. I under the blanket of an organization, I guess, has its positives. I kind of see Keenan's point a little bit, that how does it differ from, specifically just personal choice? But I mean, you've touched on some areas that I know to be true. I've been setting people up for a very long time, and I go on, breaks off and on. I'm on a break now. He's right. Like, for example, prenuptial agreements are not ironclad anymore. I mean, marriage has changed. The risks involved in relationships have changed. Anyone has the right to be apprehensive about locking in an agreement for the rest of their days with someone of, the same sex or opposite sex, because you never the hell know nowadays. I mean, I think that maybe having an organization kind of, I would imagine, kind of like Al-Anon, maybe, like, is that?
Yeah.
Sorry. It organizes it a little bit better. So they're like, for victims like yourself, I don't know if you like survivors of abuse like yourself, it's got to provide some outlet, I would imagine, of healing and comfort and helping make decisions moving forward. Otherwise, the organization wouldn't function. Correct?
Yeah.
It's got to provide something of benefit.
Yeah, so I think kind of the difference is the MGTOW isn't really an organization. It's just, it's a term, and some men choose to apply that term. There are MGTOW groups on Facebook and so on, but there's not like, MGTOW International, whereas we masculinists have, International Association of Masculinists, and we have our communities and our communes and all that sort of stuff. So we're organized. They're just literally guys going their own way. But it does give them a resource to sit down and talk and be like, look, if you're going to be with a gal, you need to do this. If you're going to marry a gal, you need to do this. If you see a gal showing these signs, you need to get away. And I think that's the difference between...
I actually think that's important. I actually think that's important because I can tell you the horror stories that I hear from people that are looking to get married a second or a third time and what people go through. This has got to be, people will do more research into buying a used car or washing machine than they will in picking a spouse.
Exactly.
I get in trouble all the time from these two because I don't want to date anyone that doesn't have any money. And it's not because I'm a gold digger. Who in the hell wants to dig for gold? I want to trip over the big pile on the floor. It's got to be visible. I don't want to dig for nothing. The reason for this, for me, I want to make sure though you understand my point though. The reason for this is not because I'm a Jap or want to live a lavish lifestyle. I take things seriously. Rent is high. Braces are expensive. I'd be coming into a relationship with 2 children. If you're marrying me, you've obviously got to be taking us on as a family. Otherwise, you wouldn't be getting to that point. I want to know that we can have, that we can rely on each other for sustenance and we can afford to live a balanced lifestyle. And I'm not talking about vacations every other week and expensive pocketbooks, groceries, having a car that runs and is fully insured. You know what I'm saying? Life costs money. I'm going to make a decision based on a partnership, not based on how much I'm in love with you that day.
Yeah, and so you're very much like what we call femininists and masculinists, and what we hold that, look, a woman wanting to be in a relationship with a man and to be certainly based on money, family status, and all that, that's actually good. That was what worked through all of history, okay? But now what's happened is there are women that want that, and, I'm presuming you're not one of these, but there are women that want that but then don't want to give the correspondence.
Dear God, no, absolutely not. No way, for sure. Absolutely. I would never. Totally. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where
and I'm very hardworking and have 3 careers. So you know what I'm saying? For me, it's completely different. It's not about status and glitz and glam. It's about being sensible and practical and having, mutual respect.
Exactly. And MGTOW will point out that, because women still kind of want what they wanted traditionally, but they don't want to give men what men have wanted traditionally. And what do men want? Men want sex, men want attention, men want affection, men want fun. And so if you're going to make these decisions, it should be more conscious. Masculinists are similar in that, we're about making these conscious decisions, but we add unity to the mix. So, for instance, we've created in India, we've created here in the United States, what are called Dunas kibbutzes. Now, you may have heard about kibbutz in Israel, which are little communities.
I know all about kibbutzim in Israel. Yeah. Yes, I do.
So, exactly. So we call any of our places, we always add us at the end. So masculinus, Dunas, kibbutzes would be our masculinus, Dunas, geruculus would be our schools. And, each kibbutzes is supposed to have a geruculus. So by being in a community as masculinist and feminist, we are then able to, look, here are people who, look, you can see, she's farming with you. She knows how to shoot a gun with you. She knows how to hunt with you. She knows how to drive a truck with you. She knows how to repair that truck with you. She knows how to build websites. She knows how to work in the financial markets and so on. So MGTOW that's why we say it's one step towards masculinist, because MGTOW is the individualist. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to find these women or be celibate entirely on my own. I'm going to do everything on my own. And you're not doing it on your own. We would say as masculinists. You're still a part of society, right? You're using our road. You're using our internet. You're using our phone systems. You're using our food delivery systems, right? So masculinist says, since we're going to be a part of a community, a greater community anyway, why not create our own community? And that's where the protection comes in. And that then solves issues like separation, right? Divorce among us is easy, okay? If she wants to divorce, if he wants to divorce, it's easy. You can divorce. but you both stay in the community. You
How
know,
does it
since
differ?
What's that?
How would divorce differ as a part of the community?
Okay, so basically, if a masculinist and a feminist want to have a divorce, first of all, there's going to be a ritual for the divorce, no matter what their faith is, all right? And then there's going to be a celebration. Now, what this does is this removes any thought that we now have to be angry at each other. We have to attack each other. For some reason, we've chosen to end it, and now we've ended it. We both continue to stay in the community. We're living close to one another, so any children that we have literally can just go from one house to the next house, one house to the next house. And that prevents any idea of parental alienation syndrome.
So it's basically you're taking away the relationship between the man and the woman, but not the relationship from the family unit.
Yeah, the relationship between the man and the woman might still be there because they're communities. They might be farming together. They might be working in the fisheries together.
Right, I'm saying they still have the family unit intact, even though the romantic relationship, for whatever reason, is no longer there.
Exactly. Less pressure, and because we're not, society still, we masculinists will admit when society still puts certain things on women, right? And as much as we don't want to admit it, society still has this undertone that a woman divorcing or leaving is somehow dirty, no good, rotten, okay? And by us masculinists saying that, look, in every religion we've ever had that's a part of us, we've got Muslims and pagans and Christians and Buddhists, atheists, and so on. Divorce has been a part of all of these cultures. So since it has, why make it into something that one or the other has to be humiliated? And so, yeah, the romance has ended, maybe. A lot of divorced couples in society still have feelings for each other. But for the most part, it's ended, and we don't have to be antagonistic, And if we do have this sense that we need to be antagonistic for some reason, whether it's in a romantic relationship or, if Louis B. were living in the kibbutzes in North Carolina, and he and I had an issue, well, we can either go to a fight pit or we can fight with rock'em sock'em robots or video games or thumb wrestling. Like, we've actually got techniques designed to allow us to express aggression, but in a positive manner. So that solves it with kids, too, The kids don't see the mom and dad yelling and screaming at each other. They might see them boxing, or they might see them learning taekwondo together, or so on. I hope all that makes sense.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds... It's got to be. You got to...
Yeah.
I don't have that level of discipline. I wish I did, but I don't.
It's a lot of work, and that's why we went with the model of kibbutzes out of Israel, or kibbutz out of Israel. We call it kibbutzes because it's the single most successful, in fact, the only truly long-time successful commune in history. American communes have a terrible record of coming together, falling apart. That doesn't mean that's a bad thing that they dissolve after a certain time, but if you're looking for a commune to last over a century, and that's the record that kibbutz has, then kibbutz would be the model to follow. And they also have success because the children are raised kind of separately from the parents, and the parents rotate out who takes care of them any given day. And then every parent was required, this is the old time kibbutz, new kibbutz in Israel are different, but every parent was required to spend 2 hours a day with their children. So that meant not only required, but you got the time too. So even if you were separated, you still both spent time with the children together. So yeah, masculinity is a very disciplined system, and it works because of that discipline. And because of that discipline, it then tends to keep out others. Like if you look on A Voice for Men or other men's rights sites, they are, and often MGTOW, but usually not so much with MGTOW, they're often very antagonistic towards masculinists, and we like it that way because we're not interested, like we don't think about rights. We only think about power. Rights are irrelevant. If I'm being beaten by a police officer, my rights are irrelevant, and if I'm being beaten by a mother, my rights are irrelevant. The only question is, do I have some sort of power to deal with it either before or after the event?
Well, not anymore. Not anymore. With the laws pertaining to child abuse, not anymore. Nowadays, I don't know where you're geographically located.
Actually, before you get into the point, that was kind of a question I did have, is what's the locale of kind of these communes? Are they away from the dominant society? Is it something like kind of how the Amish do, or like those that try to go off the grid up in the mountains somewhere?
Well, that idea has been bantered about, but I'm actually the leader of masculinist, so the end choice ends up coming to me. And as we stand now, the decisions that I've made are that kibbutz will be in generally urban areas. Okay, so the kibbutz right now in North Carolina is in Asheville. There will be a kibbutz going up in Cleveland, probably within the next year and a half. There's a kibbutz in Delhi, and those are the three we have. Besides that, there's a lot of isolated masculinists just kind of living on their own. But as of 3 years ago, the call went out to start to gather together in these communities. So we have 2 communities now. Eventually, we'll have more. There is a group of masculinists in the Philippines trying to put together kibbutzes over there.
A quick question here, Howard. I wanted to ask this. As far as like masculinism and, or perhaps MGTOW, how do you think that this will heal the rift between men and women?
Now, that's a good thing. I'm not so sure, except as a path for MGTOW being a path towards masculinist, that MGTOW really does or doesn't do a lot to heal the rift. I should add, though, that it does make the MGTOW more conscious, right, of his interactions with women. So that certainly helps. But the way that masculinists helps heal this rift is, unlike some of the other men's groups, we don't believe in equality. So we believe in supremacy, and that is that I'm superior to everyone on this call. You are all superior to me. Men are superior to women. Women are superior to men. Black is superior to white. White is superior to black. And Muslim superior to Christian. Christian superior to Muslim. And I could go on and on. You get the idea. Every masculinist walks in the world looking at himself, and every feminist walks in the world looking at herself as superior to everyone and inferior to everyone. So what that means is that now we're being very conscious. When I speak to a woman, I realize that there are so many ways that she's better than me, so many ways that I can learn. And that's why I say we're a spiritual path compared to the other paths. In fact, the other paths usually call us a woo-woo path, okay? Because when I listen to JL, right, and she says she's not a Jap, and I hear, Jewish American princess. I don't know if that's what you meant here.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yes.
Okay. And so I see that as superior, right? Jewish myself, Irish myself, German myself, Swedish myself, all of these are in me. So I see that as superior. But then my employer, I drive a truck, is Palestinian, and I see that as superior. So now when I interact with either of you two, I don't look at you as equals, I look at you as better. But then when I'm doing something that you're unable to do, I look at myself as better. So now I've got something that I can learn from you, and you respect.
I didn't become like a part of your group or like an offshoot or like a sister company. I don't know. See, I agree with that. You would not want me on any type of compound, but I'm saying I actually agree with the principles that I actually agree with you, that these things are important, and you're absolutely right. In this particular area, I could be superior. In that particular area, you could be superior, and so on and so forth.
Exactly. Now, what that
it's
does
basically
is
making the choice to see wisdom in each person.
So let me just devil's advocate this, because I understand, but again, clarity is not coming across that well. And hopefully for the listeners, I want to get this. So when you use specific words, if we are not equal, but all supremacists, but also all inferior, what's the difference to saying we are all equal, but they are leaders in different areas?
Probably no difference. But the word equal, has come to be a loaded term. The word equal means the same. That's actually what it means. That's literally the meaning of it, like in the term equal weights and measures, okay? And, however, it's come to be a loaded term. So with feminists and with social justice warriors and with other things that's going on, any time that they can point out a difference, they say, therefore, we're not equal, therefore, this one or that one must be brought up or the other brought down to be in the same space. Equal has kind of sense that we're in the same space, and only in select areas will they allow that one could be superior, like in sports, okay, in college. The person who's promoting that we should all get paid the same will promote, but in college, sports, the football player should not be the accountant geek, okay? So it comes down to, as all things in human society ultimately go to, and that's a matter of rhetoric. Okay, the term equality, we're all created equal, has proven to be a huge sellout. No, the African or the Irish slave sold here wasn't equal to the Anglo. They just weren't. And no, the child born in poverty isn't equal. No, the person who has been mugged isn't equal to the other. We don't have the same experience. So what we're doing is using as a matter of rhetoric these concepts to take people from this low thought of let's just bring us all down to this low state to this thought where all of us are elevated. And you, in order to elevate another, you must elevate yourself. So in one form, you are correct. There's not much difference. But in the other form, it's an entirely different thought process. You'll actually, if you start to think of yourself as superior and everybody else, as you're walking around and you start to observe the world, you almost feel your brain changing. You feel when we have our conferences with groups of masculinists and feminists, voice conferences, in-person conferences, you start to feel a change. So I'll give you an example of how just the terminology that I keep saying, you, I, me, that's typical English. In masculinists, the sense of supremacy leads to it and them and us. So if we were in a group of masculinists, we would be referring to jail as them. JL, and we would be referring to Louis B as them. But let's say that I was talking to JL. So JL, they are very much like us. Louis B, it and we met 6 years ago. So when we're referring to somebody on the side, we refer to them as it, not he or she. When we refer to somebody direct, we're referring to them as they. And an individual in masculine and feminist refers to himself in the plural also. So all of these little language tactics, and we're creating our language, these language tactics are designed to change the mind, to make you focus on other things. So is it in end respect perhaps similar to just saying we're equal and we have different leadership? Probably. We're not out there creating whole political systems, right? We're just merging into the existing one. But it's a matter of rhetoric. And rhetoric makes the mind come up with new ideas. Because in the end, even though we are a collectivist, we want people in our collective to be able to think on their own and do on their own. So these are just tricks to do that.
So
Does that help make sense? Go ahead. Pardon.
Go ahead, take it, Keelan.
No, I mean, yeah, I just wanted to clarify because to me, I pulled out that it was rhetoric, but rhetoric can also be damaging at times. So if you're not clear behind it, then there's no real basis for it.
Yeah, you have to, part of the reason for the strict rhetoric that we masculinists use and part of the reason for being so different is deliberately to keep people out. We're not out there recruiting. Men's rights activists want a bunch of people to be men's rights activists. MGTOW could kind of care less one way or another, and masculinists want to keep our numbers small. We're not interested in having this explosion of people calling themselves masculinists. We want to keep that number small. So part of the reason for our rhetoric is designed to do just that. That's why, for instance, we don't refer to ourselves, these other groups would think of themselves as the cure to a problem, whereas masculinist feminists, we would say, is the actual problem. We are the disease. See, we don't speak of it in a positive term as other people would attempt. We are the disease. Feminist was the cure for that disease. And as with every disease, it loses efficacy over time. Feminist is the Latin term for feminine, and masculinist is the Latin term for masculine. Those masculine and feminine elements are going to keep cropping up. They're not going to be destroyed. And so that's why, again, we refer to it as a disease. And by doing that, it keeps our numbers small. It prevents people from just joining on a whim. Every 2 years, over the past 8 years now, we've completely changed and destroyed our rhetoric. And when we did this because 8 years ago, I noticed that people started to follow me and attach me like I was a messiah, and I've even been called that. So I deliberately did things that would make people in the masculinist groups dislike so they would leave. And that keeps them
though you might be the messiah of common sense, though. I said you actually might be the messiah of common sense. That could very well be here to bring reason and rationale to all.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the way that I'm doing it is by not using reason or rationale or logic at all. So I'm a pagan, I'm a psychopath, I'm crazy, I don't use logic, and if common sense somehow comes out of the accidental path that I'm on in that regard, by trying not to be logical, somehow I end up being logical. I just see that as collateral damage. I leave logic, science, and so on to everyone else.
So, I mean, I kind of get it as like a very self-aware individual where you realize where your strengths are, and you're also aware about the flaws that every human has, but you're aware of your individual flaws as well.
Precise. And that's what we try to train both masculinists and feminists and others as we happen to see. You know, this idea that has grown in the men's movement that women are just evil, or this idea that's grown in feminism that men are just evil. It's not really how it is, and we all know it, right? So recognize your own strengths, your own weaknesses. I'm not going to be very good with math and numbers. I leave that to the women in my relationships. They're the ones who manage the finance, because I'm not going to be very good with that. That's me personally. In the masculinist organizations, I leave the financial matters to my underlings. And that's not even the right word to call them, right? Because by being my underlings, they're my superiors. And by being their superior, I'm their underling, and so on and so forth. Recognize all of that and then work together cohesively. And then you're not going to get offended when somebody's better at you than something. You're going to see that as an advantage to you. And that's what we're doing. And I think that's where MGTOW are, too. You know, that's really, again, we look at them as sort of our kin. MRAs we see as a completely other group that, you know, really have nothing to do with us. And we like it that way.
Yeah, Elle, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, it sounds like it's kind of similar. I mean, it's a similar lifestyle to the healthy polygamous families. I'm saying it's similar. Like, everyone knows their place. There seems to be an understanding between every individual. For the most part, the people behave themselves and do what they're supposed to do and fulfill their obligations to the tribe, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, listen, like, I look at it like this. I really do. I used to have a strong opinion on polygamy, okay? And then I am not interested in being a polygamist. I think I'd be a terrible sister wife. You don't want me in any group
The enigma
setting.
of the Bermuda
You know what I
Triangle is
mean?
that more aircraft.
Like, you just would want to bring me in for, like, entertainment purposes. But I used to have big opinions on this, and then I started to do a little bit of research and figure out, well, okay, in the healthy polygamous situations, this is what goes on. These people either grew up this way, came to be this way, but there seems to be a healthy understanding amongst the group of what everyone is supposed to do. And if they actually do it, and they're happy to be there, they actually have a very great quality of life, regardless of what my personal feelings on one man having more than one wife might be. For them, it actually does work. Like, I think about, I work so much. I'm single. Wouldn't it be nice? I've said it jokingly. I need a husband and a sister wife to, it's a joke, but I think about, how terrible would that equation really be if I actually had a sister wife to, like, raise my children, whereas I am better in the workforce, whereas she could be better in the home. I don't know. It would be unlikely I would take on a situation like that, but it doesn't sound terrible if you can get past the sharing of one man. It's, you know what I mean? So for me, I look at this as being the same way. There are people who are offended that I live under the blanket of somewhat organized religion. Who cares? If it enriches my quality of life and I'm doing it for my reasons, who in the hell cares if I'm not hurting anybody? That's kind of my take on anything that would be considered an alternative lifestyle or an interesting situation.
Yeah, and, so this, I'm going to get into, if you guys are good with this, really what we, in masculinists, there are, people think of loyalists as somebody who holds to your ideology, right? We masculinists don't. So in our particular case, let's say that you were like, all right, I want to come to one of your communities and I want to stay here. Well, whether you ever fed into our ideology would be irrelevant to us if you were doing the things that the community needed while you were there, right? A loyalist is about doing, and that's another difference between MRA and masculinist. Masculinist is always about doing. It's always about action. If you were a man-hating feminist who totally wanted nothing to do with men, wrote all this stuff about how men should just die, you came to the community and you were feeding the fish, well, then we would consider you a loyalist. That is one of the primary differences between men's rights and men's rights organizations and masculinists. You look at A Voice for Men, go look at any of their donation drives, right? Thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars they get, and yet still not one single shelter for abused men. We masculinists collect no donations at all. We refuse to, and yet we have a shelter for men. Okay, and soon, year and a half, we'll have another one up in Cleveland. And I just started some conversations with the new masculinist down in Florida, and we may have a shelter for men down there within the next 3, 4, 5 years. So we do all of this. We do. The donations are irrelevant, so that's a side point. But when it comes to any of these things, loyalty is doing, loyalty is not believing.
Well, what is like the application process? How do you guys make sure, let's say there's somebody who, let's say, wants to be a loyalist per se. What would you do to consider that individual to come into the community?
Right now, it's all through nepotism, whether familial or friendly. So somebody that comes into a community is somebody that is closely known to another masculinist or feminist, whether through friendship or family. And that person then is vetted personally. The individual masculinist, feminist takes responsibility. That person starts to have a lot of conversations with other masculinists and feminists. So
if I were a feminist and I had, let's say, a relative that wanted to be a loyalist, I would essentially almost be, for lack of a better term, that individual's representative. Like, I am vouching that Stacy is who she says she is. And it would be my responsibility if Stacy is not who she says she is.
Yes, and you get into another key aspect of masculinist feminist theory, and that is responsibility. We refer to it as 396% responsibility. Okay, a circle is 360 degrees, 396 is 360 degrees plus 10%. So it's like saying 110% responsibility. And this concept means that we take responsibility, not just for Stacy, but I don't know you, Yael, until just now, right? This is our first meeting. Before I ever met you, I was taking responsibility for you. I took responsibility for the creation. The things my mother did to me, I take responsibility for that. The bombings in Syria, I take responsibility for that. So by a masculinist, feminist in rhetoric, taking responsibility for everything ever, good or bad, that means that now, again, the brain starts to change. That's what rhetoric does to the brain. It changes the brain. And now that individual sees, hey, I can do something about it if I'm responsible. And it also gets to another thing. We don't call people in this. We run it like a cult. We literally run it like a cult. And we call that collective union of liberated thought. And we chose the cult because we took vows saying we wouldn't put somebody in jail, and the men's rights activists were like, oh, you guys sound like a cult. We're like, that's a brilliant idea. Thank you. Anyway.
Let me ask you, what if somebody, let's pretend I'm a feminine, am I mass femininist? Am I saying it right?
Femininist. It's spelled
Feminist.
P-H-I, feminine, like, but we just say it all together, feminist.
Okay, so let's pretend I'm a feminist, all right? And I have vouched for Stacey. I promised you that Stacey is a competent loyalist. Let's pretend I was wrong. Let's pretend my friend Stacey was really a reporter, and I just didn't know. I didn't know. I mean, what do you do in those situations where, in this case, it could be, let's pretend Stacey is a reporter for the New York Times, but let's pretend in a different equation, Brian or Stacey really has issues with touching children, and they, let's say Stacey saw, befriended me because I'm a feminist, and she sees that I live this very organized lifestyle, with people whom I trust and respect, and let's pretend Stacey has some trouble that I just don't know about, and brings it into the cult, as you say. What would be the ramifications if there's no jail or legal involvement?
Okay. Well, so when it comes to something like somebody touching children, we are going to react to that. That's the one instance where we don't have the resources to isolate someone from children at this point in time to guarantee that.
So that would merit legal involvement.
That would merit
legal involvement. Like the police in that case would be called.
Yeah, so let's say that wasn't it. Let's say that Stacey came up and she hit me with a frying pan, okay? That does not involve court. That's between her and I, okay? And, so then I would either defend myself, or if I'm knocked out, she would be restrained or held back or, kicked out of the community or whatever.
But she wouldn't be going to jail.
No, no, no. As a matter of fact, the penalty, all of my relatives, including those not masculinists, and all of my friends and all masculinists know that even if somebody kills me personally, Earhauer, the penalty is that they are to buy the entire commune a hot dog. Okay, because I'm Irish as well as these others that I mentioned, and the Irish way was you had what was called a murder price, okay? And that murder price wasn't about punishment. You know, the modern American society is about punishment. The Irish society was about reform, okay? It was about healing. So the idea behind them buying a hot dog is, you know, look, you hurt the community. You're going to sit down now and you're going to become a part of the community for at least one meal, and you're going to understand what you've done to us, okay? Now, other masculinists can have their own choice in what they do, but a loyalist would not turn, you know, if Stacy killed me, they would not turn her over to the police. That's just the way it is. And we don't, here's another thing, we don't call the people in the cult followers. We call them, there's two groups. There's humorers, which like you're humoring me right now, yeah, right? You're listening to what I'm saying and you're responding. Some you're agreeing with, some you're disagreeing with, but you're humoring me. You're letting me get out my thing. And so an outsider that kind of is a loyalist, we would call a humorer. An insider, we would call a humorer us. We add us to the end of everyone who is a part of us. So a humorer us. And the idea being here is that, you know, whatever crazy ideas I'm going to suggest to these guys and gals, if they're going to do them, they're just doing them for the sake of humoring me. Partly because it creates, you know, a sense of theater, partly because it creates a sense of community, partly because it's funny, and partly because it's serious. It's a whole different way of looking at things, while at the same time, it's deeply rooted in tradition, be it Talmud or Torah or Quran or Toinbo Kuli or Mahabharata or any of these ancient things. We're part tradition and part completely new. And so that's
you're
why
actually
we call...
absolutely right. In Judaism, that there is room for schools of thought like this. You're actually right, at least for Jewish culture. Yeah, there's room for this for Jewish culture. This exists. And something similar, obviously, similar principles. There are families, I'm saying there are alternative lifestyles hidden all over Israel. Currently today, polygamy families, alternative thought, lots of them.
Yeah. Well,
so I know that, you know, to me, it's not an unheard of thought because it still exists within my religion and culture.
Yeah, and it's really what's going on in America, right? We're like, we refer to other people as subhuman, and we do that on purpose. This is another rhetoric attack where immediately they get offended, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, it's like I'm subhuman. I'm a subhuman group, Irish, Jewish, Swedish, German. You know, I'm a subcategory of human, you know? And by using these negative terms, but then flipping them around in a positive manner, the person at first gets offended for, you know, however many microseconds, and then suddenly they're laughing. And one of our beliefs is that, you know, if you can smile, if they can't take your smile, then all of the rest is irrelevant. Okay, and people smiling together. Louis, you asked about, you know, how are we healing the rift between the sex? Well, we do that by making them both smile, and that's really the core key there. And so when I come at somebody and I'm at them from one angle, and at first they totally dislike me, my totem, Yael, is a badger, right? And badgers are soft, cuddly, but, you know, you attack and they get fierce, right? And then they're soft and cuddly. But in the pagan world, badgers are the diplomats. So you would not expect that from a badger, but they're the ones that bring different animals together to resolve their differences in the spiritual world. So by us coming at it from all these different angles, is it different from anybody else? Yes. And is it the same as anybody else? Yes. A little bit of the old, a little bit of the new. Let's merge.
So before we wrap up, I wanted to just ask you, anyone who leads, okay, I'm sure that in any compound, occult-ish, I suppose, alternative lifestyle situation, let's just reference, let's say, the Mormon Church and the Hasidic Jewish culture, which are both very different, you know, and to some degree in their own way, alternative lifestyles. What happens? Because I can only imagine people are people, and people, you know, I hate to say it, but people say they're going to do something or commit to something, and then they do not. And that's just, I think, part of being alive. what happens, like, what is the, is there, if somebody, let's say, I don't want to be a feminist anymore, I want to be a third grade teacher and live in Iowa, and I don't want to be affiliated with the cult any further, what would that process be like?
Very simple. So, right now, it's always seat of our pants, right? Somebody comes, somebody goes. This happens quite a bit. They come in the community, they leave the community, and it's no big deal. In the future, we'll actually be setting up 401ks. The way we're working this is very much like a book where the resources are all shared. So what happens is in any businesses that we run as a group or, any of us that have jobs outside, all that money gets shared. But then out of that, we'll be setting up 401ks for people, health care. So that way, if they leave, they can still keep their health care until they've got, some other option. They've got their 401k, which they can cash out if they want, or they can live on. And of course, then the pay and stipend exists. So, you're getting paid, but you're sharing resources like food and all of that. So your pay doesn't cost. It's not like you have to go out and pay rent and you have to pay food. Again, very much like kibbutz, with one of the slight differences being that I'm not sure how kibbutz worked in Israel, where if you left the kibbutz, you got to take anything with you, whereas with us, you'll be able to take things with you.
Excommunication. I mean, usually it's an excommunication situation. It's usually not pleasant on any capacity for anyone, either the person leaving or the community losing a member. It's usually bad.
Yeah, and for us, we're trying to make everything be as pleasant as possible. You mentioned, like, what if it turned out that the person was really working secretly for a secret article in the New York Times? Oh, we would think that would just phenomenal. We love it when that sort of thing happens. We love it when, and we've had a couple leave who, like one of the requirements is that you sign an agreement that you're not going to be doing drugs, okay? Now, we're not going to try to follow you around when we are outside of the community, but if we catch you with illegal drugs in the community, that's a problem, okay? It means the community can be taken away, the land, the building, so on, right? And one of the fellows was there posted this online saying, I will not be a party to harm these people. Why? Because we told you can't have drugs, And then he's like, no, because you said everybody has to make a donation. That's true. And we said, like, if it was a homeless person, the donation they make when they come to the community might be a can opener, It might be a lease that they found on the way. I mean, the point isn't a donation. We don't need your stuff. The point is that you're contributing to the community. Bingo, exactly. So, did that turn out bad? He thought it did. He thought, I'm going to expose the guys. We loved it. We love every single time we get negative press. It's great. But for the most part, we want the experience to be positive. And so probably it's taking us a couple more years, but probably in about 2 years, everybody that comes in will have a 401k or some other form of retirement that allows cashing out. So if they want to leave, they can leave, and it's great. No problem. And, some people will be people that spend 3 months a year. Some will spend 2 weeks a year, and that's okay, too. We're keeping it small on purpose, for that reason. You get more closeness that way,
Okay. Well,
that's how I see my matchmaking situation. I only take on a certain. I said that's actually similar to how I run my matchmaking situation. I only take on. So many people have said, "Ooh, let's do a website." No, because then it takes away the individual attention that I'm able to give. Which means for me, maybe there are matchmakers out there who have the mental capacity to set up 100 people at a time. I don't. I can only set up, let's say, I can only work on 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 at the maximum. So that would be 10 people, let's say, at a time. Whereas, you know what I mean? I keep it close knit so I can actually get to know you and actually find you someone who makes a lot of sense for you. You know what I mean? By purposely keeping it mom and pop.
Yep. That's exactly what we're going to be doing as the numbers do grow large enough that there's enough matchmaking, like it's beyond just 1 or 2 people getting together. How are we going to handle when we're larger? Well, the decision we've made is the matchmaking will be handled by the Women's Council, the Feminist Council, okay? Men are not permitted in these communities to flirt with or to hit on the women at all, okay? Since we are polygynous, and I think I don't know if you caught that earlier or if you come in later, but, we are polygamous, and so you're either celibate or you're polygamous. Yeah, and if you're a polygamist, you might only have one, okay? And what we say is, from Isaiah 4:1, in that day, 7 women will call upon a man and say, our food and our clothing we will provide, only give us your name to take away our shame. Well, we don't really believe in shame, in that context at all, but we go with that scripture. So every masculinist is either required to be celibate or have 7 wives, and by 7 we mean 13. And what does all that mean? Well, that gets into numerology and number symbolism and so on. So, one masculinist might be a polygamist by having one wife his whole life. That's all he's got. Well, how's he a polygamist? Well, there's a metaphorical aspect to that, okay? But since he's a polygamist even with one wife, it's not his place to just go hitting on women. And, we've had that circumstance where people who were new to the community tried to, be told them, you don't hit on any of the women. And they did anyway. And it's like, so then that woman has to come to me, and I have to be like, dude, leave her alone. And that's why the men don't do it. It's handled by the Women's Council, and eventually when we have enough numbers, everything's looked at. Astrology charts, numerology charts, psychological makeups, religion, and so on. All of this is looked at. The women will be getting together. They'll be deciding, okay, you want to be with so-and-so, and you want to be with that guy also. Are you two compatible? Not the men. Are the two women compatible? And, so on and so forth.
That, I would imagine, would play a very big role, because two women that don't get along, that could turn into a shit show right away.
Yeah, whereas the man, if he doesn't like the women that the Women's Council brings to him, too bad, okay? It's your job to become a father. It's your job to lead a household. And, the man does have some say, okay? We're not saying that the men have no say. But, once you enter a realm where the man has the ability to be a polygamist, then that means he has to give up something. And what he gives up is, this flirting that's going out and trying to, it's not his job. The other thing is that men, contrary to popular opinion, are far more emotional than women. This is what we've noticed. So when it comes to men with women, they're not going to make the decision, certainly not in modern society, based on her status or her family, her history, or this or that, and so on. He's not going to look at her astrology chart. He's not going to look at psychological profiles or makeup. He's going to look at whatever it is that, gives him that woo-woo feeling in his stomach. And that's why being a psychopath is good for me, because I don't get that, right? I'm interested in, what do the women in the community have to say as to whether any of these women would be good for me. So eventually what will happen is the Women's Council will make that decision. They'll take it to the Men's Council. Then the man will be brought in. And, he's not going to be forced to it, but there's going to be a point where it's like, look, you've got to make a decision. And these two are good women, or this one's a good woman. You need to be with her. So these numbers like 7 wives, and by 7 we mean 13. 13 is the number of divine rulership. 7 is the number of perfection. That's why the MRAs call us, the zoo crazy spiritual guys, because we're always looking at the metaphysical, not just the physical. And you're right, with the matchmaking, it's not going to work if we just have a website and some woman fills out a profile and some guy goes, let's get together. And the other thing that it guarantees then is, as I said earlier, that she's got certain skills. She knows how to hunt. She knows how to drive a truck. Okay? that she knows basic concepts of law, and so on and so forth. Everybody doesn't have to be an expert in everything, but we want our masculinists and feminists in these communities to have a wide range of skills and knowledge. And then from there, that you can make a contribution. And most importantly, and this gets back to your question, what happens if they leave? If somebody spends 2 years in a masculinist community and they leave, they're going to leave with the ability to work half a dozen different careers,
right,
and do them well. So we are looking at a balance. And yeah, I agree with you. And that, again, goes right back to, the woman in the community. She's not going to be looking at this woman and be like, oh, she's got pretty eyes. I think she should be with Earhouse. No. She's going to be like, Earhouse thinks she's got pretty eyes, but I see what she does with those eyes, She's not looking out for, da-da-da-da-da. And so on and so forth. And then that all starts to get into status. Status is important among us. And we're creating artificial forms of status, because that's all status is anyway, right? It's an artificiality. So we create artificial markers of status. And by saying this makes you such and such, then it does. That's the end of the road there, like our names. Our full masculinist names or feminist names. My full masculinist name is Masculinus Gerhauerus Ambracus Titulus Climate. And that's just great, but it works, right? So, yeah.
I mean, listen, I got to pick my Hebrew name, so I get it.
Yeah. And, I've taken a Catholic name, I've taken a pagan name. I haven't taken a Hebrew name yet, but that's going to come. I'm talking to some rabbis, so we'll see where that goes. But, yeah.
I picked out something that I don't know if this is helpful, but when I picked out Hebrew names, the English name that I keep under my hat, so to speak, business, I look at it, because it's a name that I never felt like me. I didn't feel like myself in that name my whole life, actually. And I've had Kabbalists and, chart readers get into that with me, that there was a spiritual reason I didn't connect with that name, because I wasn't born Jewish. So I spiritually, growing up, felt very disconnected. I felt like, for lack of a better word, a Jewish kid thrown into the world to fend for themselves and find their way home spiritually. That's always how I felt. So when I picked out a name, I went through the Tanakh and I picked out Yael Aviva. Spring, calm, a sense to renew, Aviva is spring, and then Yael is mountain goat. And there's a story in the Tanakh about Yael where she had to save the Jewish nation. She had sex with King Sisera, I think it was a general, 7 times, and she drugged him with wine and cheese, and then she got a tent into the temple. And I said, listen, under similar circumstances, I might do the same thing. It just felt like me. It felt like me.
Yeah, it's the same with us pagans. When we take a pagan name, or it's a sense of coming home. It's a sense that you were just always pagan, and that's again the question is really asked: what's the difference between masculinist and just the rest of society? And in one sense, there's absolutely no difference, and the other sense is that now there's a term that we use that centralizes something that's core about us. We're in the age of Aquarius now, and I'm a Sagittarius, and the age of Aquarius will feed, being an air sign, will feed the fire sign. So this mysticism that we have just isn't answered in others. And here's a real key to it, okay? Because the water bear is a male, right, in the sign. And this is an age where the male and the female, as much as there's a push to making us all the same, and a push that, somebody can be born a male and is actually a female and all this other stuff, as much as that happens, the reverse is going to happen. And that is, what is male, what is considered male, will be magnified, and what is considered female will be magnified. And we're doing that by just creating these artificial custom statuses and so on, and saying, in this case, like in my faction, there's different factions in masculinists, and in my faction, there could be 20 different factions in a commune, in a kibbutzos, but in my faction, the men would be shaving the left side of their heads, and the women shaving the right side of their heads. That's completely arbitrary. But when I look at a woman with the left side of her head shaved, I just get the sense that she's masculine. Whereas if I see a woman with the right side of her head shaved, I get the sense that she's like ultra feminine. Completely arbitrary, right? But that's how it is.
Okay. Well, I want to first thank you for joining us. This was a very in-depth conversation, very knowledgeable on this. I hope people get something about being introduced to these type of societies and different ones that are a part of our culture. Anything that you have to promote?
If they want to contact me, they can go to facebook.com/masculina. So it's MASCLINU, masculine US. So MASCLINUS, masculinus. And, they can shoot a message over there. I'll reply. Might take me a day or so, depending on what's going on. But other than that, we don't have any websites or anything right now. Probably next year we'll have a radio show. But nothing fancy right now. Just mostly one-on-one communication.
All right, great. Yeah, what you got?
Okie dokie. You guys, thank you so much I've seen a lot more YouTube activity lately. Please like and subscribe. Continue to download, like, and subscribe for Love and Play. My YouTube is Yael Meisels. Please subscribe. Seriously, it's for the children. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, Urban Humor YM, and get excited. I'm going to be at Climate on January 18th at 6 o'clock, happy hour. Commercial brokers, you get out of work at 5. So I expect to see you in the chair at 6 on Monday the 18th for my show, where 7 minutes of why I could be a descendant of either the Antichrist or the Mothman, either or.
All right. What's going on, Louie?
All right, this is what I need you guys to do. Email us at forloveandplay@gmail.com. Subscribe and hit us up on Facebook at For Love and Play. Give us your questions, whatever you want us to talk about. You need questions. You got questions, we got answers. Also, if you want to follow me, my Twitter is at LouisB1. I have a show coming up at the legendary Broadway Comedy Club on January 27th. That's a Wednesday at 9:30. Tickets are $11. $11 if you ask for Steve and you tell him you're there to see Louis B. And you can follow my personal podcast, my radio show, my baby, the Crotch Shot Radio Show. We're going to be live this Thursday at 10 o'clock. We're going to be talking to one of the militiamen that had the contact with the Bundys over there in Oregon. So it's going to be an interesting show. Interesting show, very informative, and free to listen to. We're also on, as well as for Love and Play, we are on iTunes, iHeart, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and podcast.com. Just it's free to listen and download, and tell your friends. Say your friends, download. You got nothing to lose but a lot to gain. Take it away, Keenan.
As you know, all my information is on my website, www.kenwanweaver.com. Every Sunday, New York Comedy Club at 8 o'clock, Sunday Night Live. And last month, I had the pristine honor to host a debate party for the Democratic debate, and they asked me to do it again. So January 17th, in the Stanford area, let's get this. It's now 2016, so politics is kicking up. Come on out. I'll be hosting, making you laugh, and all that information will be on the website. Everybody, thanks for listening. Keep loving. Keep